friends, so today we're going to talk about your loved ones, your spouse, your friends, your family, those that don't necessarily understand what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And today we're going to talk about, I'm actually preparing to have a session with my wife to explain things, but the thing is that that's not always going to be easy for you, for anybody. Let me just share this here. And the thing is that when you're online, when you're building a business online and you're trying to build your business online, it's no people around you, they typically won't necessarily understand what you're doing, right? And you got to understand that they don't understand. So we're going to talk about that in a sec, but first this, my name is Jean-Serge. I help entrepreneurs like you generate residual income from digital course strategies. And of course, when I talk about digital course strategies, I'm talking about building a business, I'm talking about selling courses, I'm talking about doing webinars, I'm talking about having an email list, having social media presence, building an audience. All these things, they're all very important. And the thing is that when we talk about your spouse, when you talk about your loved ones, your family, trying to explain to them what you're doing, you can't just say things that you understand, because it's not their world. They don't know, and it's okay that they don't know. And that's one of the things that is the hardest to understand, is whenever we, especially when we start to build our business and we start to understand more and more, and we start to be able to explain everything to anybody who's in that field, right? Anybody who's trying to build a business has a better understanding. Anybody who's been in business understands. Anybody who's been on social media, maybe influencers, people who are like influencers, they all understand lots of this stuff, but not necessarily everything. So, but still, when we try to explain it, it's easier for them to understand than the people in our lives that have totally other interests, totally other things that they're worried about, other things that they stress out about, other things that that fills their life, right? So they might not even have any interest in online stuff. They might not even have any interest in business. They might not have interest in social media, right? Other than just being on it, like I guess regular people, right? People who use it as the platforms intended it to be used. Us marketers, we do things differently, we use them differently, and it's not necessarily obvious to explain that. And when we're talking about building a business and trying to explain that to our spouses, or like I said, our loved ones, it's not easy. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what I plan on doing, what I've been doing over the last while, and the kinds of things that might help you to explain it to your spouse, to get your family on board, to get them to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. So the first thing is communication. I'm sure you've heard that everywhere. It's super important to communicate what you're doing, when you're doing it. Have a schedule, be clear as to what you're trying to do and when you're going to do it, and maybe you can't really explain it, right, what it is and why you're doing it there, because they wouldn't necessarily understand, right? They can understand you want to do something, but they don't necessarily know why you're doing it and why it's so important to you and why you think it should be important to them and all this stuff, right? That's normal. They, like I said, they're living, they have different priorities, different values, different beliefs, different activities, different stresses, everything's different, everybody's different. Sure, you could have some commonalities in your relationships, your spouse, your friends, your family, but there's going to be differences, and communication is the most important thing. You got to be communicating when you need to do something, and you have to do it, right? So there's communication, and then there's action, taking action. You got to be taking the action that you say you're going to take. Like for me, what I do is I do videos, right? These videos every day. I do these Snapchat, Instagram stories, Facebook stories, those kinds of things. There's certain things that I do pretty much every day, and that's one of the things that I communicate to my wife. I'd say, okay, I got to do this, I'm doing this. She might not necessarily understand why I got to do it every day, but I've told her that I have to do this every day. This is just part of my routine, part of the reasons why I for me and you, understanding, of course, we know it's to build your audience, to get people to know and like and trust you, right? So that they eventually buy from you. There's all these things, right? But for them, they don't need to understand that. They just need to know that you need to do this, and it's of importance to you, but you got to communicate and take action according to what you tell them, right? So take action, communicate, take action. The other thing is that's important is that you need to understand that they don't need to know all the details. They don't need to understand everything. It's super important that you understand that, because it'll be easy for you to maybe get upset or get frustrated, or maybe they'll say something that goes against what you think, and you might get upset because you don't understand why they don't understand, right? So you got to understand that they don't understand. It's okay that they don't understand. It's fine. They don't need to know everything. They just need to know that you're doing it, that it's important to you, that you're taking the action, and when are you taking the action. The communication, that's the easiest, the most important part. It's the hardest thing to do, of course, making sure that everything's communicated, because in your marriage, in your couple, in your life, in your environment, in your relationships, you got to make sure that it's not just communicating about your stuff you're doing online, right? There's all the other communication that has to happen, right? The communication about your schedules, about your finances, about the meals, about the kids, about the education, about the travel, about your vacations. Everything has to be communicated, right? So it's not always easy. So adding this to it is a stress. It is something that has to, but it's something that has to happen. It's something that's super important. Without it, that's what causes problems. I remember a couple of years back, I would just assume that my wife understood things, and that I didn't have to explain to her that I needed to do this, I had to do this. And it's like, why do I need to do this? And I was trying to explain it, and she didn't really understand why it was so important to me, because I wasn't really relating it to her, and because that's another thing, right? When you're trying to explain what to do, why you need to do it, and you're trying to explain it to her, you got to, or him, if you're a woman married, right, if you're your spouse, a man, you have to explain why it's important to you. And if you can relate it to why it's important to them, it can help. But how do you get there, right? How do you get to the point where you can because you need to understand how it relates to them, and without communication you won't be able to figure that out, without asking them questions, without understanding what's important to them. Like for me, building a business online is important because I need to build the business. I need to generate some income so that I can quit my job and be home here with my wife and kids. So that's how I relate it to her, in the sense that if I do this and it all works and do it right, and I end up getting enough income to quit my job, then I'll be able to be here, and I won't have this other job. Right now I'm working remote, but I still have to, I have a schedule. I have to make sure I do my work. Right now it's like during the lunch break, so I'm doing this video, but I'm still working, and it's on a schedule, and it's from X time in the morning to X time in the afternoon, and 5 days a week. And it's all not the same as being here with my family, working on this business that I'm building online, that's going to be according to my schedule, right? So that's why I'm doing it. And then the other thing is explaining it to her, and getting to a point where there's actually a possibility of me really trying to explain it, right? Taking the time to explain it. You got to communicate that that's important to you, so that you can both find a time where you can actually do that. And you got to be organized. You got to, like I said, you got to communicate, got to take the action. You got to understand that they don't understand, and it's okay for them to not understand at all. You can't get upset at them for not understanding, and you shouldn't get upset if they say something that you don't understand. That's relationship 101, right? So tomorrow we're going to talk more about this topic, and hopefully you got some value out of this. If you think anybody needs to hear this message, and please go ahead and share. I'm sure they'd appreciate it, and I would too. And until next time, this has been Jean-Serge Gagnon, and this has been Course Income Secrets. Until next time.